my channel. I hope you're well and that you've had a good 2 weeks since the last new moon video that I did for the new moon in Cancer. So this is going to be your geoscope for the upcoming full moon in Aquarius, which happens on the 3rd of August. As you probably noticed, the lunar cycles are slightly out of kilter with the solar cycles at the moment, so we tend to have full moons at the beginning of the month rather than the end of the month, which can be a little bit confusing. So anyway, full moons tend to be about closing things out, or where things come to fruition or culmination. Now there are some fairly challenging aspects around this particular full moon, in addition to the Lionsgate portal energy, which will be with us until around about the 12th of August. So that's just something to bear in mind. But the good thing about full moons is that they generally are about endings, things that we are kind of releasing. So anyway, let's get into your reading and see what wants to come out for you in relation to this particular full moon cycle. So like most full moons, this one lasts for 2 weeks. It's the second half of the lunar cycle, the waning moon, and so it will last until around about the 3rd week of August. I have also, if you haven't seen it, done a video specifically for the Lionsgate portal. There's a message, an I Ching special message, which I will link at the end of this video, because I think that for most of the readings that I've seen so far, it certainly is, it feeds in and kind of adds another layer of meaning to the readings. And the other thing I should say is that I've had a couple of requests, people ask me where I got my cards from, and I have designed them myself actually, but I'm planning to redesign them because I don't think that they're particularly clear on camera. So someone suggested that I offer them for sale because they're quite useful to buy in conjunction with the ebook that I've done on geomancy. So I'll let you know when those are kind of ready, and when I've got a print version of the book to sort of send out for that. But I'm not quite sure about distribution. It might be a bit tricky to sort of post it overseas, so it might have to be UK only initially, or sort of UK and Europe, but we'll play that by ear. Okay, I think that's probably shuffled enough. Let's cut your cards. Oopsie. Okay, interesting. So this has come out a couple of times, I think with the reading for Virgo and possibly Pisces. So again, you're kind of going into this particular full moon really focused on getting happy, on sort of cultivating joy, lightness, enthusiasm, all those good things, which is understandable, but I think it's going to be there are a couple of obstacles that you're going to have to sort of overcome or kind of ride through. So that's just something to bear in mind. So if you aren't in that happy place all the time, it's not your fault. There's quite a lot of interference and resistance happening around and about as well, including in the planets. So in the 4th house, you've got Puella. Now, this is home and family and roots. So it looks as though when it comes to home, things are kind of quite they're quite harmonious. Things are going smoothly. You kind of maybe decorating your home. You're wanting to make it beautiful, a place where you can feel really, you can kind of nestle. So that's quite nice energy, and it looks like you'll be getting on a lot better with relatives and things. So if there has been some arguments or difficulties, I think those should smooth out over the next 2 weeks. Yeah, because it looks as though you are still feeling a little bit of kind of loss or grief about a particular person. Now, this doesn't need to be a family member. It's usually a significant other, which could be anybody. It could be a spouse, a romantic partner. It could also be somebody that you work closely with. It could be a really good friend, someone you consider to be your kind of bestie. There's lots of ways that this energy can work. It's about one-to-one connections that are very significant to us. And here we've got the opposite energy to Jupiter. We've got Saturn's energy here. So it does look as though there may be some trouble when it comes to a significant relationship. However, when it comes to work, it looks like you're starting a new cycle. So that's quite interesting, actually. Yeah, but we'll dive into that in more detail once I've got the rest of the conversions done, because it will give us a bit more of a handle on what's kind of going on. So I'm just going to pause quickly while I do those. Hi Sag, welcome back to reading. I've done all the conversions, so let's get into this reading in more detail. So let's begin with the full moon itself. Now for you, this is going to happen across your 3rd house and your 9th house. So the moon will be here in Aquarius in your 3rd, and the sun will be over in the 9th house. So these two houses form a pair. They're an axis, and they're kind of about two sets of kind of oppositions. On the one hand, this is about kind of local affairs in your local environment or your immediate family, and this tends to be about what's at a distance from you. So it's about foreign connections, about relatives that live overseas, and it's also about kind of as I say, things that are not close by, that are foreign to you, for example, so you may not be familiar with them. That's the one kind of way of interpreting this axis. The second is in terms of the way that we use knowledge. So this tends to be about knowledge that we gain through reading books, through listening to the newspaper, hearing things from other people. It's about facts and sort of raw data. This tends to be more about wisdom. So it's about knowledge that we either glean through personal experience, or through wise sage teachers, or perhaps through sort of divination, so through spiritual means. So it can be intuitive, it could be dreams, it could be through spirit guides, that kind of thing. Now there's a tension between these two things at the full moon that we're going to have to sort of balance out, and this tension is going to be exacerbated by a T-square between the luminaries and Uranus, which is in Taurus. So Uranus is sitting here in your 6th house. Now the 6th house is about work, it's also about health, and it's about our kind of everyday routines, as well as pets. So it could be that there is some kind of ending or some sudden separation or cutting off that happens at the full moon, that has to do with work, that has to do with our everyday kind of routines, or to do with health or pets. So it may be that, for example, there is a disruption, maybe the neighbors, there's a disruption with regards to neighbors, or schooling, for example, your child's schooling, which affects your sort of your everyday routine. But there's definitely a kind of a break from the usual here. So that's one thing to say. And then the second thing to say is that the luminaries will be making a positive aspect to Chiron, which will be in your 5th house. So the 5th house is children. It is also creativity, as well as what brings us joy and passion. So it can be new relationships, but yeah, I kind of think in this instance, because we've got Tristia here, that it's not likely to be. Tristia is kind of it's not the most auspicious sort of geomantic figure. So given that this is a positive aspect, which is all about healing, I kind of feel as though this is kind of more to do with perhaps having a child, healing dynamics with a child that has to do with your sort of everyday environment, and also affects it involves relatives, for example, or schooling, because these are both also about education. This is about schooling, and this is about higher education. So it could be that there's some kind of disruption that involves a child, perhaps to do with holidays, or not having holidays, or a holiday being cancelled, or school routines being a little bit upset, and this it may throw you for a loop in terms of your everyday schedule and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, it's also potentially quite healing. So that's one thing to say. The other oppositions we have at this time, and around about the 2 weeks of this waning moon, is an ongoing opposition between Mercury, which is in your 8th house in Cancer, and 3 of the outer planets which are sitting in Capricorn here in your 2nd house. So 2nd and 8th house is really about possessions. So this is about your possessions, earned income, your skills, as well as your self-worth. And then the 8th house is about those resources that we share with others, usually one other person, but it can also be with an institution like a bank, for example. So it can be about bank loans. So here we've got this tension, as I say, between Mercury and between Saturn, Jupiter, your ruler, and Pluto, which is going to be happening between the 30th of July and around about the 5th of August or so. So this is going to call for decisions that need to be made, sometimes some difficult decisions, and you're going to be kind of pulled between heart and head, or kind of gut instinct on one hand, and then making more kind of logical, thought through decisions on the other. So this is kind of this is where Jupiter and the outer planets will be in Capricorn. So this is kind of making sensible decisions, shall we say, and this is more about going on one's gut. And I mean, it's interesting because we've got 2 really auspicious geomantic figures here. We've got your planet and sign, Jupiter and Sagittarius, in your 8th house, and then we've got Fortuna Minor, which is the sun in Leo, and of course we're in Leo season at the moment, in your 2nd house. So it doesn't look as though whatever decision you do make, you're not going to go too far wrong. On the one hand, if you need, for example, some input from other people to, or you need, you're looking for ways to make money, I do think that you'll get help, fortunate help from others here in your 2nd house. And if you're looking to sort of get a loan, for example, from the bank, or join forces with one other person to perhaps earn some income together, or perhaps share costs, that looks equally good, because it here is about gain. It's about profiting from your ideas or your collaborations or your actions. So I don't think you can go sort of wrong there. I think the key is just to try and find balance between making decisions emotionally and making decisions using your head. So that's the other thing to say. And then the other key aspect that it will be going on is a square between Mars, which is in Aries, so here in your 5th house, and Jupiter, so in your 2nd house. So this is a little bit more tricky. Mars is kind of like wanting to push forward, to kind of get things done. Mars is in a hurry usually. Jupiter, on the other hand, is, it's usually, I mean, it likes to take risks, but it's currently in a very risk-averse sign, which is Capricorn, which is telling you to kind of tighten your belt, hold on to things, save as opposed to spend. So there's kind of a bit of a struggle going on between whether to sort of play it safe on one hand or to kind of take a risk on the other. And here, as I said, we are talking about the 5th house. So I think here what we're talking about possibly is a new love relationship. So, we've got Tristia here linking these 2 houses, which is 7th house is significant to others, and the 5th house is often new love relationships. So I kind of feel as though, if you are pushed into making a decision between kind of playing it safe or taking a risk with a new lover, I would say play it safe, because Tristia is not a very this is about things ending in tears, and because we've got it repeated twice, I think it's worth taking note of when it comes to relationships. Fortuna Minor is much more auspicious, so I think if it comes down to it, perhaps err on the side of caution. Don't do anything that will kind of mean disrespecting yourself or doing something out of your integrity, I think is maybe a good way of putting it. So I think those are the sort of important things to highlight. The other thing that's interesting about this particular reading is that we've got Capricornus a couple of times. So we've got it twice here in your 10th and your 11th houses, which suggests a new start. Now, new moons, generally speaking, are not about new starts. They tend to be about things closing out, but they can also be about, kind of things coming to fruition. So it could be that you've set intentions, for example, at the new moon, around your career, and that these start to sort of bear fruit now, or kind of start to flower. So I do see new connections or karmic contracts starting for you when it comes to career, as well as group situations. So it could be, for example, that you decide to start something new when it comes to a business or a career sort of path that involves either social media or a group of people, perhaps, you know, some kind of association, like a professional association. Or it could be, you know, that you're joining forces with a friend, and this leads to, you know, sort of, this is the help that is available to you in the second house, or indeed, you know, here in the eighth. And that may be why we've got both of these as being quite auspicious. Now, it's interesting because Mercury is the ruler of your seventh house. So I do see this as being about an extension of some kind of joint venture here. You know, with one other person, but I don't think it's this person. But let's put it this way. So I think when it comes to personal relationships, there may be some difficulties. When it comes to business collaborations, I think things are going to go well, and that may be what this is about. So I think it's just getting very clear here about, it's almost like you've got two layers of things going on. And I think that definitely the focus needs to be on business. I think even though you're quite keen to sort of get happy, I think that there's going to be a few things that are going to test you in that regard, and that you're going to have to sort of like overcome in order to sort of like come through this period, you know, and sort of maintain your kind of equilibrium. I think family relationships on the whole, those people that you live with, your immediate family, I think things are going well for you. As I say, I think that, you know, relatives at a distance, it might be a different story. So I think it's kind of a case of sticking close to home when it comes to looking for support right now. So the outcome of your reading is quite interesting. We've got Acquisitio, which is reiterating this working together with others energy in your eighth. And then we've got Via, which is usually about movement or kind of travel. And I think in this case what it's saying is that there needs to be a kind of a moving on, a kind of cutting of your losses when it comes to certain situations that perhaps are not really kind of panning out, or that are not meant to stay. And so I don't know whether this is literal travel, because that is quite difficult at the moment, but I do feel that there is kind of momentum or movement. And I think that it's a case of like swings and roundabouts. So in order to sort of really gain, you need to choose who you kind of team up with carefully. And then I think anything that is causing you grief, perhaps let go of. This is almost kind of, as I say, kind of cutting your losses is, I think, a good way to put it. Moving on, cutting your losses, realizing what is kind of past its sell by date, because a missio is not just about loss, it's also about realizing what is transient, you know, what is kind of no longer serving you, needs to be let go of. And I think that is potentially where the full moon energy kind of vibe is kind of, you know, sort of jiving here, is sort of saying, you know, just release what needs to be released. Focus on what you've got to work with, what's tangible, and what is sort of like within your immediate ability to influence. And don't sweat the bigger stuff. So normally I would say don't sweat the small stuff, but I think in this case it's kind of don't sweat the bigger stuff. So if stuff seems overwhelming, put it on the back burner until later. It could be that things shift by themselves. Focus on what's in front of you, and you know, if you need support, ask for support from, you know, people that you feel you can trust and that you can count on, not necessarily people that you're not sure about or that are giving you a bit of aggro. And then I think the key here too is to expect things to shift when it comes to a particular significant relationship. You know, let it go if it's giving you grief. It doesn't seem worth it. And then, you know, focus on friendships and on collaborations that are going to enhance your career, that may be done through social media or possibly through a group or a friendship. That looks particularly good. So there is definitely some gains to be made, some success to be had here, but there's also a sense of things shifting and possibly, you know, having to sort of move on or let go of certain situations. So quite a complex reading, Sagittarius, and I think probably we'll only fully understand it by the time we get to the end of this period. So do, you know, follow me on social media to see my daily astrology transits, because they could shed more light and more detail on, you know, the particular nuances of how situations are going to unfold. And the other thing is, check out that video that I did for the Lion's Gate portal, because that energy will also be active over this period, and I think you might find the overall message of that useful for kind of navigating through any potential difficulties. So anyway, I hope that's been helpful. A bit of a departure from your other readings, but I think we're all kind of going through a slightly, I don't want to say rocky patch, but you know, we can't always have things going downhill. Sometimes we kind of hit an uphill slope, and it's just, you know, swings and roundabouts. So do let me know if this resonates, and in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this reading, hit the like button. I'd love it if you would subscribe, and again, I'll catch you in a couple of weeks when I do the next new moon reading. So till then, all the best, and I'm sending you lots of full moon blessings.